stuff. So,
Hey everybody, I'm down here at LA Talk Radio doing the Flow Guitar Enthusiast show, and I hope that you're going to enjoy it. We've got some great talent coming tonight that's going to play on the show, and I hope you'll tune in and check us out.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Flow Guitar Enthusiast radio show. Hey Scott, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. So I'm not even really going to talk about anything that I've been doing because I just want to go through our quick giveaways, and we have a crap ton of stuff today. So just want to remind people to go to our website, www.flowguitarenthusiast.com. You have like 20 minutes to sign up to win the Audio-Technica wireless guitar unit, and it will also come with some swag from our guest today.
Yes. And without further ado, because we got a lot of stuff, some interesting music, some great guitars, I want to introduce Norman Harris from Norm's Rare Guitars. An amazing person. I got to meet him, and we did a video interview earlier this week, and we went to lunch. We had a great talk. Norman, it's truly a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great show, and I'm glad to be in on the early stages of the show.
Thank you. Now, one of the things Norman and I were talking about is the need for newer acts to come in, and we need to keep the new blood flowing so that the music keeps going on. And Norm brought some friends of his, and we're going to start out with, I'll let you introduce our first guest. We have several people coming in playing. There's guitars coming in and out of the studio right now. I'll let you introduce Michael, and we'll have him play something for us right now.
Well, you know, every day at the store, we never know who's going to walk through the door, and I've seemed to have adopted some new young players, and you know, I'm trying to help them, you know, get introduced to some folks in town that I know that might be able to give them a break. And yesterday we went out to see my friend Tony Berg, who's an amazing producer and a fantastic musician. And I thought that, you know, they would be, these two acts that I'm bringing here tonight would be great for him. And we have this young guitar player here, Michael Lemo, who is, in my opinion, one of the best young talents there is. And you know, when we hear people at in the store that are outstanding, all of a sudden everybody starts peeking their head through doors and everything, going, who the hell is that? Well, Michael Lemo, he did that to us. So I wanted to bring him down and introduce him to you guys and get a little.
Thanks for being in the studio, Michael.
Yeah.
But we'll let your music speak for you, then we'll start talking more. But go ahead. Amazing.
Thank you.
Great stuff. And the sound.
Well, he's still learning that piece I was teaching him. No, I'm just
Yeah, we have pictures. Scott took some pictures, and Jen's here too from Norm's store. She does all the videos. She did our video of us. And yeah, you got to take a look at this guitar. Now, he was playing this, obviously. We weren't using it. This wasn't plugged in. This was mic'd. And that acoustic sound, the sound of the guitar by itself is just, it's beautiful.
Yeah. I played a couple in the stores back in Philadelphia, and this one just had a ring to it, you know. I think that with a lot of times with guitars, it's very even if you get into great models, it still becomes specific to the one that you play.
Yeah,
Right
that's
there.
the unusual part. I've seen detunings, but I've never heard what you've done.
And you were doing that sitar thing before you were showing
Yeah,
us,
you can kind of like if you really bend like the 2 G's in a row, you kind of get like a. Stuff like
That's
that.
pretty wild for an acoustic. I've never heard acoustic guitar sound like that. That's pretty cool. Anyway,
Yeah.
you started your store, as I understand it, in 1975.
Yeah, but I was actually buying and selling guitars in Miami in about 1967.
Oh, wow.
I had a band and we weren't making a lot of money, and I loved guitars, and I bought one guitar through an ad in the newspaper, and I got very lucky, and it turned out that it was a pretty valuable guitar, and I ended up bringing it to some of my gigs. I'm actually a Hammond organ player, and I was
That's
bringing
what yeah, he's a keyboard player. That's great.
So I ended up bringing it to a couple of my gigs, and people wanted to buy it from me. And being the entrepreneur that I am, I figured it was an opportunity to actually make some money. So while the band was sleeping all day and getting up to play the gigs, I was up at like 6 in the morning chasing newspaper ads, going to thrift stores, music stores. And back then they didn't even call it vintage guitars. I mean, guitars that were 20, 30 years old at that time or older were just used guitars. And the term vintage came out later, probably in the late 60s, early 70s.
Now, most of those guitars you got, I presume, from like pawn shops and stuff, because most stores had newer guitars, right?
Right. Well, a lot of stores won't take used guitars in because they don't really know what the market is. And in Miami, there was like a groundswell of some people that were saying, wow, these old guitars are really good. They're a lot nicer than the new ones. And this was in the late 60s. So even some of the guitars that were new then are now collectible. But they kind of recognized that the guitars, say, prior to 63 were really outstanding instruments. So I developed my own little clientele, and people would call me and come over to I had an apartment at the time. And then I moved to California, and it was a hotbed for buying instruments because a lot of groups would come out trying to make it, and when things didn't work out, they'd have to sell their instruments. Fender, the manufacturer Fender, and Rickenbacker are out in LA.
Yeah.
And so, in the LA area. And so it was an opportunity for me to find some things. And, while I did the legwork and I beat the bushes and I got the newspapers and kind of used to go down to the Greyhound bus station at 5 in the morning to get the LA Times on Saturday, which they had a Sunday edition of the Times. And we actually found out, we followed one of their trucks that delivered the papers, that the Sunday edition would come out Saturday, but with Saturday's news, but with Sunday's classified. So, and that was the big thing. This is before the recycler, before...
Yeah, no penny saver recycler.
Yeah, none of that stuff, so it was before the internet, and everything. So I would just chase these things down. I'd call people at 6 in the morning and they'd be pissed off at me. And I'd have to tell them, I've got cash and I'm going to work today, which was a white lie. I just had to say that to try to get them to come over. And 95% of the people would let me come over and buy their guitar, and 5% would scream at me and hang up at me.
Well, when you started collecting, when you started actually buying and selling guitars, was there really... were there people aggressively going for those guitars at the time? Because if I remember correctly, at that time there was a lot of good people that know, like Les Pauls weren't worth a lot, or nobody really, there was no... I know that some of the artists like Clapton had a guy go around the country and hit pawn shops and just buy stuff.
Yeah, I was kind of curious what guitars then were people looking for.
Well, people were looking for Les Pauls, and they were looking for .NEC 335s and old Martins and things like that, but it was a very select amount of people. Then Guitar Player magazine came out, and they had a Rare Bird column that a buddy of mine, Robbie Lawrence, used to write, and that sort of exposed a lot of people to the older guitars and the qualities of the old guitars.
So you're probably one of the few, besides someone like Joe Bonamassa or whoever, who's seen and owns multiple 59 Les Pauls.
Yeah.
You probably had more come through your hands than even those guys. What's so special about those guitars, and then And how are the R9s that are being made today compare?
Look,
Because they're not cheap either, but they're much more affordable.
But funny you mentioned Joe Bonamassa has a number of them. I've known Joe since he was about 13, and he's been a customer and a friend, and he comes in, he was just in the other day again, and he's going to be doing a concert for us for the Midnight Mission, which is a homeless charity that I work with, and him and Robin Ford, we're going to do it probably in January, so just to get that little plug. But the late 50s Les Pauls, and this happened with a lot of instruments like the Stratocaster, the Telecaster. Those original designs were so iconic and so right on the money that there's very little that you can do to kind of improve that, for what they are. I mean, there's been research and development in a lot of these companies, and they've tried to do other things, and nothing seems to work like those original designs. The Martin D28, which is, the staple, and when you think of a Martin, that's the model you think of. It's pretty hard to go wrong with these basic models. Gretsch and Rickenbacker and Mosrite, they came out with guitars, and they had cool designs too. But now there's really been nothing that's revolutionized the guitar market. There was a robot guitar that Gibson came out that's self-tuned, but that went over for about 2 or 3 months, and it didn't make it.
Yeah.
So, with all this money that they spend on research and development, if I was at those companies, I would pretty much do what we do, just build the guitars that they make, do a good job on that, and I think they'd be fine.
And so on the R9s now, do you think they faithfully reproduce what they used to do?
They're really good. They're very, very good. They're not exactly the same as the old guitars because they're not using old wood. Okay, these guys are my other adopted children here. This is another band that came in and they just started playing in the store, and then everybody was kind of going, who are these guys? And, I've just kind of felt that they come from Alabama. The name of the group is the Kenneth Bryan Band, and I have Kenneth and Frank Ritchie here from the band. There's 3 other members of the band. They sing incredibly. They play incredibly. They're just one of those groups that's the real thing. They kind of remind me of the band in a lot of ways. Just very organic. Yeah. No synthesizers, none of that crap. Straight ahead, great stuff.
Okay, let's listen to the Kenneth, or half of the Kenneth, or 2/5 of the
40%.
Yeah, 40% of them. Kenneth Bryan and Frank Ritchie.
How many do we get? 1 or 2? Do we do 1?
Do one for now, then we'll close out.
All right. How you doing out there? Let's do the one with the harmonies and everything. Coming down where no soul like yours can be found. When the wind blows cold across the sea, when it's falling down for me. Up on that hill, living good, and you're doing the things that say you should. They don't know golden hearts must bleed. So when it's falling down from me.
After I came to, I realized that's the one that got away.
Now, is this the Country Gentleman that Gretsch just redid, the black one, or?
No, well, they did a duo jet.
Oh, that's right, that's
you
right,
know,
it's a duo jet.
But this was the Country Gentleman, which is probably the guitar he was most known
Yeah.
for playing.
That's the Ed Sullivan show
Yes,
one.
he was off that guitar because he had started playing Les Paul and he became a Les Paul player. And at the time, he also bought a '57 Strat for me, which was really good. And he paid $1,500 for the Sunburst Les Paul at the time, which was a lot of money. Which now they're $100,000 to $500,000. Another brilliant move on my part. And I sold him a '57 Strat, and that was for $750, and it was beautiful. And he hammered me. He told me, he said, "Look, could you throw in this little Tweed amp that I had?" And I threw in a Tweed Princeton amp. I was so dumbfounded dealing with George, I would have given him whatever, you know, I mean, I just couldn't believe it.
How much do you think that Country Gentleman would be worth now?
If there's $1 million guitar, that would be it, you know, so that.
If you can get down to the store, it'll blow your mind. It's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Norm.
Norman.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for having my adopted children here.
Yeah, and if you
Bye, everybody. We're going to go out with the music. Thank you for being for listening with us and joining us on the show. Thanks everybody in the chat room, and we'll see you guys next week. Have a great week.
Hey everybody, we just had a wonderful time here at LA Talk Radio, got some great music, the show went terrific, and I'm really hoping that everybody's going to keep tuning into this radio show. It's really good, and if you're a guitar enthusiast, Jeff and Scott, Ronan, got Frank, Michael, and Kenneth over here, I mean, it was a lot of fun, so I hope you check their show out more often, and there's going to be a lot of other great stars on the show, so LA Talk Radio, Flow Guitar Enthusiast.
Yeah, you can visit our website, www.flowguitarenthusiast.com, or find us on Facebook, The Flow Guitar Enthusiast. We'll have all kinds of giveaways and cool guests coming up.
And even our engineer here, Ronan, he's a guitar player. We're all guitar players here.
Tells